Welcome to the part 2 video for ASA 315, and in this one I'm going to specifically talk about a few areas of the explanatory material. Now I'm not going to go through every paragraph because this is essentially a really good how-to guide based on the standards. So, for risk assessment procedures, for example, it gives you more detail on what the auditor is supposed to do, but remember as well that these are only guidelines. So these are suggested practice, but they're not legally enforceable. So you'll see that there's information about assessment procedures. Even when you go here and it says, what do you need to do to inquire about management or inquire of management? It gives you some very specific examples. So these are often used as the basis for forming checklists that you might see at various audit firms. Now I'm actually going to skip ahead, hopefully, to find a specific set of paragraphs that have some specific information. I'm looking for 108 here. 100. So, communication and components of internal control, for example. On this slide, here are the sorts of things it says you need to know about components of internal control, but here it's a lot more specific. Well, we need to think about who can authorize, who reviews, what's the information processing, what are the physical controls, and what are the segregation of duties. So again, this is all much more detailed information. Now I'm looking for paragraph A128, which is just here. And the reason that I'm going into this particular paragraph is because A128 is where information about assertions are contained and the use of assertions. So these assertions, aren't actually contained within the legally enforceable sections. So the assertions aren't legally enforceable, but these are considered best practice. So firms may have different examples of what these assertions might be. So I'm going to start with the assertions about classes of transactions and events and their related disclosures. So really this is anything that is going to be on our profit and loss. So our assertions relate to occurrence. Is everything real? Did it really happen? Completeness, have we recorded everything, all of the items? Accuracy, which almost always relates to have we got things recorded at the correct dollar value amount? We have the cutoff assertion, which is things being recorded in the correct accounting period. And then we have classification, which is about things being recorded in the proper accounts. Over the page, I'm just going to add it here, we also have the assertion of presentation and disclosure. I can't remember whether it's written as presentation and disclosure, but this is really, is everything reported in accordance with IFRS or our AASBs? Is everything prepared, calculated, displayed, disclosed notes? So this is especially applying to our note disclosures, and these apply to all of our profit and loss items, every revenue and expense item. Oh, there you go. Over the page, we can see it's presentation. It's not presentation and disclosure. Now, my second set are assertions about account balances. So really, this is anything relating to the balance sheet, and there's a specific list. Existence. Are things real? Did they really happen? Rights and obligations. Do I have a right to my asset or an obligation to my liability? Completeness is the same. Again, completeness always has that keyword of all. Has everything or all been included? Now you'll notice down here, you'll have accuracy, valuation, and allocation. So accuracy is the same as we had in the transaction area, but we use valuation and allocation as well because valuation is a little bit more complicated. For example, with an asset, it's not just how much did I buy it for, what are the shipping costs, insurance, setup costs, testing, etc. Classification. So things are recorded in the proper account. So is it an asset, a liability, or an owner's equity? Quite often what I see there is the non-current versus current. This is where Centro and PwC got themselves in trouble. And then the final one is presentation. So has everything been presented and disclosed in accordance with what they say here is the applicable financial reporting framework? We know that here in Australia, that's our AASBs. Internationally, that's IFRS. If you're in the US, for example, that would be GAAP. So the assertions are really, really critical. And that was the one key thing I wanted to draw your attention to in this explanatory material. If you're ever stuck as to how to exactly implement anything from ASA 315, then here is the answer. There are plenty of sections that contain lists of information about the sorts of things you need to understand about the client. The assertions is the key one. In our next video in this series, I'm actually going to look at the new exposure draft and talk about positive things that we're seeing in the exposure draft and some areas where I think there's still some work to be done. Obviously that exposure draft isn't enforceable. It's the first iteration of the new standard that we're going to see in ASA 315. If you have any questions about the explanatory materials, please pop them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. Thanks for watching, and if you thought the video was useful, I'd love for you to give it a like, and I will see you in the next video.